It's 4 o'clock on a Thursday, and it's time for Taxi's Quarantini Happy Hour. I forgot I had the headphones plugged in. How are you guys? Good to see you all. Welcome to the big show. Glad it's nearly the end of the week. I am literally falling asleep at my desk today, and the only flavor of Rockstar around was marshmallow, and it's pretty bad, gotta say. Sorry, folks at Rockstar who give us free drinks. I mean, if I were 8 years old, I would love that. Yeah, I'm not sure what day it is. Honestly, this week has been kind of a butt buster. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm working on a big taxi project that I can't talk about yet. Working on another personal project that I can't talk about. Everything's a secret. It's like the CIA over here. Working on road rally stuff. I'll be back here on Saturday. Yeah, it's Thursday, Mary. I'll be back here on Saturday. I am determined this Saturday to get at least 75% of my panels sketched out. I need to do that and then start calling people to see who can show and who can't. Ken Mesford agrees. It's terrible. Yeah, Rockstar, well, they give us 2 pallets of free drinks at the road rally, and we generally have about a pallet left over after the convention, and we give like half a pallet to the staff of the hotel, and we take the other half back and stick it in our office and our warehouse. Yep, it's Michael's conspiracy stuff. Vodka Rockstar. There you go. Well, anyway, we're going to have some fun today, but I'm going to let the room fill up a little bit more before I give the backstory on this, because people will be saying, what's he doing? Who's that you're listening to? But I think you guys are going to find this interesting. It's all about the ear and not so much the gear, and hopefully what I'm going to play you today will prove it, because we all know I've got a big ego and golden ears. I'm actually very proud of this. I've mentioned the recording that I'm going to play for you today several times over the last year, probably in Quarantinis. A thing that I did in a band's living room, actually their parents' living room, and I was in the garage with a Mackie 8-bus console, which I'd never even seen in real life before, 3 ADAT machines synced up, which are VHS tape digital machines, 8 tracks per VHS, and you run 3 of them in sync using like a special fiber optic cable. And it was a new environment for me. I was sitting in a garage in 30 degrees wearing a winter coat. I don't believe I'll save it all for a few minutes from now. Like number 12 is yours. I think it's funny. You guys like to claim which like is yours. Yeah, you know what? Go in there and like it now, because if you don't, then I'm going to be crushed. I'm going to be heartbroken. Yeah, I wanted an ADAT. And nowadays, you don't need an ADAT because your computer is your ADAT. I am still blown away. I barely get a chance to turn Logic on. Excuse me, I got a froggy throat. I think it's got something to do with the Rockstar. It seems like every time I drink it, I feel like somebody stuck a caulking gun in my mouth and injected caulk down there. JP found a recording from 96 done on an ADAT. They were actually pretty good sounding machines. But yeah, to really be skilled, like to do editing, bouncing back and forth between 2 of them was kind of hard, if I remember. And the Mackie 8-bus console, I think, only had 3 band EQ on it, but the EQ sounded really good. And, and the preamp sounded really good. Anyway, talk about it in a minute. Still seeing people showing up. So let me say hello to everybody. We've got Darren Fletcher, Darren Moss. You can only get into today's show if your name is Darren. Pierre Venio, Peter Rahill, Marion Laird, Chris Anderson, Ronald Schultz, John Pearson, Marion Laird, my eyes are blurry, Nancy Collell, Jesse J. Peck, Dan Weber, who have I missed? Keith LeBrant. Oh, Keith, you're going to love this one. Today's show, I think. Stick around, going to play some music. Ricardo JP, Dean Turner, Dan Weber, in case I didn't say it. I think I said that already. Anyway, Marlon Laird, that's Marion's alter male ego, right? Marlon. Anyway, all right, so I'm going to get into it and play this stuff. And I actually it's coming off a cassette deck, and I can't tell. I didn't annotate the cassette to say if it, usually I was pretty good about writing like what the bias was. Was it Dolby A or Dolby C or Dolby B? What levels, all that kind of stuff. But this wasn't done in a real studio. It was done in a very cold garage. And I think I just wanted to get the hell out of there. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning or something. So I just literally ran off board mixes at the end of the night. And then slept for 3 hours, got on a plane, and flew back to LA. So anyway, the year was somewhere around 1996, 97, 98. There was a taxi band called Martin's Dam. They had previously been known as a band called Bricklin, kind of like from Flock of Seagulls era. They were signed to A&M Records. I don't think that the record did great, didn't do badly, but not good enough that they got picked up for a second record. Let's call it what it was. All right. Anyway, it wasn't a band I was even familiar with, didn't particularly like the kind of music they were doing in the 80s. But then again, I didn't like much about music that was made in the 80s, just a personal thing. So I kind of remember, I could be getting little bits and pieces wrong, but the overall story's pretty close. I was also writing a column for Recording Magazine at the time that was called Reader's Tapes, I believe. And excuse me, had something fuzzy in my mouth, probably from the Rockstar marshmallow flavor. Anyway, I was doing reader's tapes, and I heard a submission for this band called Martin's Dam, and the song, I believe, was called Fear of Flying, and I loved it. And I literally tracked the guy down. Remember, Google didn't exist then. All kinds of stuff didn't exist. But I tracked this guy down, called him up. His name was Brian Bricklin, and said, I just want to let you know, I love this record. I love the song. I love the way you guys play. I love the way you sing. I love the engineering on it, the production on it, everything about it. Nancy says it's gopher fur. I hope not, because I haven't eaten a gopher all day. Haven't caught a gopher in about 3 weeks either. Anyway, we became friends. We bonded largely over engineering and talking about that sort of stuff. He was a guitar player, co-writer, and singer in the band. And at some point, either I gave them a free taxi membership or they might have been already taxi members. I can't remember. But the bottom line is, at some point, we, meaning Doug Minnick, our vice president of Taxi at the time, who also loved the band, we decided to shop them around at major labels and publishers in Los Angeles and New York. And they flew out here, and we took them to about 10 major record labels. And we did a conference room tour, which was kind of unheard of back then. But the band could pull off, they were like an acoustic rock band. And they played a lot of electric guitars. And had some keyboards and stuff, but they were a little acousticy. Gin Blossoms would probably be a good analog to them, or they would be to the Gin Blossoms. So we set up this tour where the guys in the band, without their bass player, without their drummer, would come with us to major labels, go in these huge conference rooms with giant tables. They would bring in their A&R staff. The band would play 3 or 4 songs. Thank you very much. On to the next label. And we did like 5 a day, 2 days in a row, something like that. I was telling Liz before, about a week later, we flew to New York and met the band there, and we repeated the conference room tour there. However, you guys know that I don't drink very much, right? I'm just not a good drinker. It gives me a headache, makes me nauseous, just doesn't agree with me. Well, the night before we had all the big meetings, the guys in the band took us out, and I got pretty well faced. I remember that I was drinking martinis that night, and I kind of remember 4 or 5 of them, And I can actually remember we were drinking them in a club that used to be a church on the Upper West Side on 72nd Street, I think. And I'm not a big fan of clubs, not a big fan of crowds, not a big fan of drinking, but I went along because that's how cool I am. I wanted to be one of the guys. So I got good and drunk. At the time, I had an apartment in LA and one in New York that happened to be right across the street from the last place we were drinking that night. And afterwards, I just went home. I remember getting sick and hovering over the toilet for several hours, got about an hour of sleep, took a shower, brushed my teeth, shaved, got my clothes on, went and met the band at Sony. And we were in the conference room waiting for all the A&R people to file in, and all of a sudden I just started feeling green. I remember somebody looked at me in the band and said, "You okay?" I went, "Not so much." And I ran out of that conference room, down the hall. I remember, I can actually picture it in my mind, made a right-hand turn into the lobby. They had a marble floor. Reception desk was on my right. And I just puked all over. I lost it, puked all over the lobby floor. And then I went to whip open the door to the hallway to run down the hall and go to the restroom and finish throwing up because I'm such a classy guy. And I puked in the hallway right in front of the door for Sony, so that anybody from Sony who came to work that morning had to step over my vomit to get in. Anyway, that's why you don't ever want to go drinking with me, ever. I'm just not good at it. It's probably saved me a lot of money during the course of my life. I don't have to worry about becoming an alcoholic. That's the bright, the silver lining, as they say. Anyway, okay, so at some point, the guys in the band called me up and said, "Hey, you know what? Our parents they have this really nice house in Conshohocken, I think that's how you say it, Pennsylvania, outside of Philly, in a very woodsy area overlooking a ravine, if I remember correctly." And they said, "Our parents are going away for a long weekend or something." And they said, it'd be fine if we wanted to record some stuff in their house. And we thought it'd be fun. No, nobody signed the band after that. They came very, very close. There's another part of the story that I shouldn't repeat, so I won't. Anyway, it was somewhere around 96, 97, 98. They called and said, "Hey, why don't you come out and we'll set up." They had the 3 Adats, which again, for those of you who joined us late, are digital tape machines that were the first ones. They were about $3,000 a piece. I remember somewhere between $2,800 and $3,200 a piece. And after a while, you could buy 3 of them. At first, it was just 8 tracks on one VHS cassette. And then later they built a system whereby you could use a cable and daisy chain them and run 3 of them in parallel. So you had a 24-track digital machine for under $10,000. Those tape machines, which sounded pretty good, combined with a Mackie 8-bus console, which, if I remember correctly, had either 20 or 24 skinny little channels on it, 8 buses out, some decent features on it, and that too was probably around $3,000. So this all preceded having, a DAW on your computer. Plugins didn't exist yet. Outboard did exist, but these guys didn't have any. If I remember correctly, and I could be getting parts of this wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Maybe the Bricklin brothers will show up and correct me if I'm wrong. But they set up in the living room, which was probably 20 feet wide-ish by 35, 40, 45 feet long. It was a really nice living room. It had a wood floor. They put some carpets down so stuff wouldn't scratch up their parents' wood floor. One side of the living room, I remember, it was I want to say a long glass wall that looked out into the forest and the ravine next to it. I think there was either a river rock or some kind of rock fireplace in the room, and I want to say a wood beam ceiling was up there, tongue and groove wood with beams. I remember walking in the room going, I bet you this room sounds good. And it did. It had just enough liveness to it, but not too much. So we set the band up in there, and then they used their snake from their live shows. They played live shows all the time and would have, a big crowd. They had a following up and down the eastern seaboard, mostly as Bricklin, but even as Martin's Dam. I went to several of their live shows. Loved them live. Really, really tight band. Great players, great performers, great singers, and great songwriters, I should add. Anyway, so I was in the garage. They were 40, 50, 60 feet away from the other on the other end of the snake in the living room. There was no video camera set up or anything. I can't remember if they wore headphones or not. I was listening to headphones. If I remember correctly, we didn't have any monitors in the garage, which was very cold if I didn't mention that before. And I was sitting in there wearing headphones. They were either Koss or Electro Voice headphones. And I remember thinking, I can't make a good recording on this. It's not an SSL. It's not a Neve. None of the stuff that I was used to working with. There weren't any Neumann mics in the room. There weren't tons of great limiters. There was no reverb, if I remember correctly. The only thing for sure that I do remember outboard-wise was they had an Alesis compressor that, if I remember correctly, was like the size of my phone, but maybe that thick. It was like, 2 inches thick. And it had a slider on the front that said more and less, or 1 and 10 or something like that. And basically you just, shoved a wire in one side and out the other side and turned it up, and that was your compressor. And for microphones, I kind of think that we had 2 or 3 Sennheiser 421 dynamic mics, which I actually like those. Used them a lot on kick drums and sometimes on tom-toms in the olden days. They had a couple of Shure 57s, and they had several Shure 58 stage mics, the one with the ball windscreen on the end. And so, if I remember, I put a 421 on the kick, which I almost always did in my career, put a 57 on the snare, didn't set up any overheads, just took 2 of the 58s, and I need a prop. Set them up kind of like that, looking at the tom-toms, so that they were looking at the rims of the tom-toms from about 3 inches above, and the cymbals, of course, were up here somewhere. So I used the tom-tom mics to give me cymbal leakage, which is what I wanted. Okay, so no overheads, no room mic, no reverb, in case I didn't mention that. That was it. So we had half a dozen-ish mics. And I recorded this stuff. And frankly, in the beginning, I didn't know if it was sounding that good or not. These guys were all pretty good engineers and producers themselves. So I was felt under a little pressure to impress them. And they kind of thought I was a big deal because of the size of the studios that I worked in. So I think that they were looking at me going, what's this dude got? So I felt like I had to bring it. And it's kind of like they gave me a very old VW Beetle, and then expected me to produce Formula One results with it. Anyway, Pedro Costa in the house. Pedro, I'm going to play some living room demos I recorded back in the 90s with half a dozen mics, 3 Adats, and a Mackie 8-bus console. Anyway, so I figured out how to play the cassette off of my cassette deck, oddly enough, into the Rodecaster. Can you guys let me know when it starts playing if the level's too hot or too low? I think it's okay. So let's have a listen. This is Martin's Dam. I've got 5 songs, but 3 of them made it onto an album they later did on a major label. I couldn't find any trace of the songs that I'm going to play you on the internet, so hopefully I'm not going to get any dings for this stuff. But first I'm going to play you a song called It Ain't You. And I remember I was actually kind of producing or co-producing with them, and I said to them, it's too acoustic-y. At the time, grunge was a thing. The Gin Blossoms were the kind of the opposite of grunge, and their stuff actually felt a little less rock and roll than the Gin Blossoms. So I said, my only mandate to them as a producer was I want a couple of guitars that sound like Ronnie Wood and Keith Richard. playing across from each other. So you'll hear in this mix that those guitars are pretty prominent. It was probably just a board mix at the end of the night. And boy, if that wasn't a long build up, here we go. And hopefully this remote works through my green screen. How are the levels?
Let's go down to the water. We can take some time, sweet time. Let me hold you in these arms again, like the first time. Yeah, it felt so right. I know you think that you don't move me anymore, but honey, it ain't you. I think it's me. Yeah, I gotta stop fighting myself and take it easy. No, honey, it ain't you. I think it's me, and I'm beginning to feel like one step closer to dying inside each time you don't smile. Put your feet to bed and come out tonight. It's alright, it's alright. Let me wrap you in this love I have. Satin lace against your skin, what a lovely sight. I know my eyes, yeah, they've looked empty for some time, but honey, it ain't you. I think it's me. Yeah, I gotta stop fighting myself and take it easily. No, honey, it ain't you. I think it's me, and I'm beginning to feel like one step closer to dying inside each time you don't smile. You have shown me silver springs and a truth that lights a better way. Darling, please say you'll stay. I had locked away this failing, but your smile released me from my pain. Oh, I've looked down, I am not. I've been fighting a war inside myself, and sometimes I get lost, honey, and I feel
Anyway, there you go. I'll play another one in a minute. Keith, I actually knew Jim Boja. He was a Taxi member for several years. And I believe that Ben Arnold ended up playing with these guys, or maybe even produced a track or two a couple of years later with them. Yeah, it was, I really pushed the Keith Richard and Ronnie Wood thing on them. Thank you, guys. It needed to be less acoustic and rock out a little bit more. And yeah, we didn't have any reverb. And again, I was literally recording this stuff on headphones and mixing it on headphones. And the mix was just literally shoving up faders at the end of the night going, all right, I'll listen to this on the plane on the way home. So, yeah, it was, 25 years ago, 26 years ago, something like that. And because we didn't have any reverb, but I wanted to do something with the background vocals in that bridge. And I remember during my Criteria days, a lot of artists, Clapton and I think some of the Bee Gees stuff, they would put guitars through Leslie cabinets all the time, almost to the point of like overdoing it. It became a thing. And we just took the output of the vocal tracks, ran it through the Leslie, stereo mic'd it, and there you go. That was a 57 on the snare. And no room mics. The reason that it sounds so good is I took those two SM58s and had them about 2 to 3 feet back from the rack toms, looking at the rack toms, underneath the cymbals. So I got a little bleed from the cymbals being above, got the tom-toms because the mics were kind of angled somewhat down at the toms. And in doing so, I actually got some snare bleed, almost like a room mic. So there was just enough of a room sound, but not too much. I want to say that we shoved the bass into a Fender Super Reverb with, I think those had like 410s in them maybe, and stuck it in a corner. I don't think we had a direct box. I almost always recorded with a direct box. I don't think they had one. So I ended up miking the amp cabinet probably with a 421. I hear a phone ringing. Anyway, and I remember throwing like winter coats and moving blankets on it, shoved the whole rig into a corner with the amp blowing into the corner, like right up against it. What else can I tell you about it? Yeah, that's about it. Thanks, Pedro. Thank you all. Anyway, so I'll play you one more. Listen to the drums on this. I got to say, people knew me largely because of the Neil Young stuff. People always thought of me as an engineer that only knew how to do acoustic stuff. And then I produced a couple of records that were very like eagle-y kind of bands, and that further kind of put that brand on my forehead. Oh, he's an acoustic guy, gets great acoustic guitar sounds. Well, I didn't want to be limited to that, It was kind of a drag. And so any chance I had to put crunchy guitars and stuff, I did. And these guys were my latecomers to that party. And I was really glad. I liked the guitar parts. I just had them up. This is just a rough mix. The next one, listen to the drums. And the vocals are a little low, but, whatever. Let's have a listen. This song is called, where's the cassette? It's called Ground Zero.
Young man, you gotta take a stand. Look for the message written on your hand. You got no plan for the coming man. Who knows what you want? Yeah.
Yay, Martin's Dam. Those guys were awesome. So, yeah, a couple people commented about, too bad Michael threw up at Sony. I probably lost him the record deal over that. Anyway, the snare, funny enough, I was so delighted that I found this stuff. I don't think I've heard this stuff since the 90s. And like I said, I was looking for something else that I couldn't find that I wanted to play for you guys. And I've got like those things that hold like 100 cassettes in there. And I saw this, pulled it out, and I called Tom down here because he likes engineering and production stuff. You know, we're both like obsessed with Studio Rat stuff. And he was listening, and he goes, "Oh, I know what you did. Sounds like you compressed the hell out of the snare and then put a brick wall limiter on it. Or did you use a sample, a triggered sample?" I said, "None of that stuff. None of it. I didn't have any compressors. I think that on the guitars, maybe the bass, they had stomp box compressors. Yeah, it was totally analog. It doesn't get any more analog than what you just heard." And yeah, the snare was just a 57 on the top of the snare, kind of an average snare. It wasn't anything particularly fancy. It was, you know, about yay deep. It wasn't the deepest snare I've ever seen, and it certainly wasn't a piccolo snare. It's just an average snare. I don't remember if it was a shiny metal one or a black one. I remember liking the Black Widow snare a lot. I always got great sounds on those. Yeah, it was very limited number of microphones, and if I remember correctly, I think they were all dynamic mics. And it was in a living room, and I was sitting 50 feet away with a Mackie 8-bus console and headphones. It was challenging, but I knew that I had to do a good job to impress those guys because they were really picky. And I don't know if I realized that it was this good, if I can pat myself in the back a little bit at the time. But when I knew that I was happy with it, and I remember thinking, wow, if I could do that in a living room, you know, but I never went back and obsessed with it going, wow, I'm really good. And then when I pulled out yesterday, I went, wow, that was pretty good. So there you go. All right, well, now we've got 25 minutes left, and we can do whatever we want with it. Yep, very great memories. And the fact that they were all so talented, you know, just made them a pleasure to work with. They weren't jerks. Yeah, Scott Bricklin has a great voice. He ended up moving to Paris, I think, and got married and had kids, but still does music stuff over there. I haven't spoken to Scott in a very long time. I do keep in touch with Brian Bricklin, who was like the lead guitar player, second vocalist, and co-writer and all that stuff, and more prone to do the engineering and production stuff. And to the best of my knowledge, Brian Bricklin still lives in and around Philly. I think he was running an audio school or something at one point. Yeah, there was no auto-tune on that stuff. There was nothing. And we did cut the tracks live, and we didn't use a click. If I remember correctly, we didn't use a click. I could be... I don't think we used a click. They were just that tight. These guys had a lot of live experience under their belt, and it shows. They feel like a band, you know? Was that a stinger ending? I think it was. Yeah, there was no fade. Anyway. That's it. Any questions, class? Yeah, the bass player and the drummer were locked. And I want to say that somebody who played on that, there was another band member named Jake that was a background vocalist, sometimes played an instrument. I could be wrong about this. I vaguely remember that somebody, and it might have been Jake, was killed in a tornado. Like a piece of wood from something had ripped off and literally harpooned him and killed him, sadly. Yeah, it was 157 on the guitar amps. I think one of them was cut live. One of them was overdub. I almost always use 57s on guitars. Yes, would I throw other mics on there? Yeah, sometimes I'd have, sometimes I'd even use something that kind of resembled a Decatree, several feet away in the room. Sometimes I'd just use a 57 kind of looking down at the floor, 6 feet back from the amp. Sometimes I'd throw like an 87 right up against on the left speaker on the grill and a 57 on the right. But I would say like 90% of the time, I ended up just using the 57, the close mic 57 on almost every guitar. I mean, there were exceptional, like times if I wanted like a bell-like tone, something that was like a lot of harmonics and bell-like, I might have used like an 87 on the amp and a combination of a direct. But most of the time, for rock and roll guitars, 57s. I didn't record anybody else in the 90s because I was done making records by then. I was already running Taxi by the time I worked with these guys. The last time I went in the studio was in 1998. I did find that the other day, and I don't think I can play it. There was a Taxi member named Ira Marlowe that I really, really loved. Very unique artist. I went to San Francisco, and the same thing with, like, I think one ADAT in a little Mackie 12 input console. Did some demos in 1997 or 98 with him in his very small apartment in kind of a rundown neighborhood in San Francisco. I remember there was a rat issue. And the amp was, I think they had a Fender Twin, a Fender Super Reverb, but I think that what you're hearing was, I know that one of the guitars was a Sunburst Les Paul, and they also used a Strat through a Vox AC30, I think it was called, like 212s in it, and that sounded pretty good. We had to put it up on a chair to make it really work, though. Anyway, Ira Marlowe. So I went to San Francisco, I think for 2 days over a weekend, and did some demos with him. And then he got forwarded. We had a Taxi screener who was the guy that signed like these major bands at A&M Records. Can't remember who he signed, but they were big bands. I mean, just like one notch under Nirvana, big, huge bands of the day. Anyway, he signed like 2 of those. I think he was making $800,000 a year, bought himself a Porsche, bought himself a house in Beverly Hills, and then sadly drugs just took a hold of him and just ruined his life. But anyway, he was working at Taxi as a screener. He and I met, we hit it off, and while he was still working at A&M, he wanted to work as a screener because he thought what we were doing here was just so cool. He wanted to be a part of discovering new talent. And he heard this guy named Ira Marlowe and said, I'd like to take him. Oh, he wasn't working at A&M anymore. He was working at DreamWorks Records, which was like the hot up-and-coming label at the time. Everybody's like, ooh, I want to be signed to a label that Spielberg owns. Anyway, I went with him to the meeting. I think Lenny Waronker, who DreamWorks was under the Warner umbrella, I remember. Lenny Waronker, who was one of the most well-liked, well-thought-of, like, senior VPs or label presidents with a very, very strong production and A&R background behind him. And we had a meeting with him, and we're sitting in the meeting, and Lenny goes, well, who would you like to have produce this stuff? And Ira looks over at me and goes, him, and points to me. I had no idea he was going to say that. And I said, dude, I've got a company to run. I don't have time to spend 2 months making a record. I just can't do it. So in the end, I agreed to spend I think I took a Thursday and a Friday off, or a Friday off, and spent the weekend in the studio with him. And Lenny Waronker said, I want you to use Jim Keltner. And Jim Keltner is one of the 5 greatest living drummers. He's played with everybody, including the Beatles, I think. And so we had Keltner, we had the guitar player from the Gin Blossoms, the bass player from the band Cracker. I can't remember who on keyboards. Anyway, and we were doing it at the studio in North Hollywood, where the Friends for the theme song for the TV show Friends was done, and it was an okay room. It was not a big, live room. It had a wood floor, some brick wall in it, if I remember correctly. It was a little liver and a little brighter than what I was used to working in. And again, this was 1998. I don't think I had done a real record in 10 years, probably. I hadn't sat behind an SSL probably in 8 or 10 years. And so walked in, had a good assistant that seemed like he didn't want me to sit at the console. He kind of wanted to, but nope. It was my record, damn it, and I was going to sit at the console. So I agreed that I would do as many rhythm tracks as I could get done in the course of a weekend. And things were not going well. I'm going to leave it at that. I don't want to call out anybody or cast any asparagus on people, but not going all that well. I would love to play you. I just, at the end of the night, like you always do, I think everybody does this, you just shove in a cassette or whatever format nowadays, and you just run kind of a mix wherever, your mix was. Like for the last overdub you did, you probably just give it a quick, a little heavy on the vocals, bring them down, okay, and then run the mix to tape. So I did that on this stuff and brought it home, and haven't listened to that in a long, long, long time. But I think that this stuff that I did with Martin's Dam in their parents' living room actually sounds probably better than the stuff that I did on an SSL. I think I went live to a Studer 2-inch multi-track as well as Pro Tools. I'd never used Pro Tools, so the assistant was running Pro Tools for me. I do remember that we used a Neumann mic called a Hitler bottle. I don't remember what the number was on that microphone, but it's the one it's got a body that's about this big, then like a tiny little gooseneck with a golf ball size, like little satellite sitting on top of the gooseneck. And the assistant said to me, "Don't use that." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "It sounds so good, but if you ever have to punch in the vocal and fix it, you don't do it here in this room with that microphone," which, by the way, never sounds the same 2 days in a row. He said, "You're just asking for trouble." But then I had Ira go out and just do one pass top to bottom to set levels. Of course, I recorded it, and it sounded friggin' amazing. It was like the best, unquestionably the best sounding vocal mic I'd ever heard in my life. And the blue mic is actually a copy of it, at least the way it looks. But this thing, I think that even back then they were like $8,000 or $9,000 a piece. I've seen video of Adolf Hitler giving speeches, with thousands and thousands of people in the audience, and he's using one of those microphones with the little gooseneck and the little like satellite sitting on top of it that contained the capsule. Anyway, it did sound that good, but I also stuck an 87 or something out there too, like, put the two mics like this, kind of nose to nose, so that I had the vocal recorded with the 87 on another track should we want to punch in. So that's that. Microphones. I love microphones. I just love, love, love microphones. But you know what? The older I get, and I realize that outboard gear, microphones, all the stuff that I love, I'm passionate about it. To me, it's like I missed that part of high school. I was never that guy that had like the 68 Camaro with mag wheels, her shifter, thrush mufflers, and all that stuff. I looked at them and went, ooh, ah, when they drove by, and I was a little envious of friends of mine that had them, but I never had that. And my parents were not the kind of parents to say, yeah, we're going to buy you a car or go get a job delivering pizzas and you can spend the whole thing on a Camaro. So I think that audio gear was my Camaro. A couple of questions have come in. Did you ever get a chance to record at Hyde Street Studio in San Francisco? No, but I did work at a studio in San Fran, but it wasn't Hyde Street, and I can't remember what it is. Were the living room demos the same songs that Martin's Dam played live in the A&R boardroom pitch? No, they weren't. I don't think they played either of those songs. Frankly, the second one I played for you, Ground Zero, I don't think ever made it to any other records. Why do you ask that question, Darren? I'm curious. Because you thought they were good or you didn't like the songs? I can't believe you remember that I had a Triumph Spitfire. I did have a Triumph Spitfire. I got that in college. But again, I wasn't a car guy. I never did anything to customize that car. Martin's Dam did submit to Taxi. They got forwarded all the time. I think that's how they kind of hit my radar that way, and the fact that they showed up in Reader's Tapes, the column that I was writing for Recording Magazine at the time. Yeah, Wally Hyder did have a studio in San Fran. My friend Ken Calais worked there. Wally had one down here, and he had a remote truck down here. I can tell you what the A&R reps were thinking. I want to play a couple songs I think are actually better songs than those, but those did make it to a record that was on... I can't remember. It was a subsidiary of one of the majors. So I don't want to play it and then have the episode get blocked. But my recollection is that the problem that people had with the band was that they had harmonies and they were melodic and they were fun to listen to. They weren't trashy, grungy, angst-ridden, angry, flannel shirt, Doc Martin guys. You know, they were more like the Gin Blossoms. There were a couple other bands people mentioned. I can't remember the name, but there were a couple other bands like that. But it was really hard to get signed and sell a lot of records if you weren't grunge back then. Damn, that's the guy in the office below me. His phone, his ringer is up so loud I can hear it up here. Can you guys hear that phone? Question from Keith LeBrand. How many beers can you drink before you hurl, theoretically speaking, of course? 3 would probably be the number for me, and apparently 4 large martinis. Nothing worse than drinking a lot of margaritas when the salt makes you thirsty, you drink more, and then the lime juice just starts eating a hole in your stomach. Oh, baby. Yeah, I just don't tolerate alcohol well. Yeah, you can hear the phone. Great. Wow, and my wife is now occupying the office next to mine. I can hear her through the wall. I don't know, man. I can't work under these conditions anymore. Do you have any idea how hard it is to have a hit TV show in an office? Sonia Dada, no. I did a Technicolor yawn. What does that mean? Oh, thank you, Nancy. All right. Well, we got a few more minutes. We got 8 minutes left. Should I play those again? Do you want to? I mean, now you know what to listen for, especially on the first song. Check out the background vocals on the bridge going through the Leslie cabinet. Toad the Wet Sprocket-ish, kind of. Yep. Yeah, I'm definitely going to be broadcasting the road rally from the home office again this year because we had the setup down, there. I don't want to try and recreate it here and have it not go well. So we're definitely going to go back to the house again for the entire week. Bria and I We'll be there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday doing the prequels. Then Thursday is setup day with our technical director. The big boy video stuff comes in on Thursday afternoon, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday we hit the ground running. All right, so now let's see. I am gonna watch this, folks. Brace yourselves. The magic of television, right? Oh man, I forgot what a pain in the ass cassettes were. Boom!
Let's go down to the water. We can take some time, sweet time. Let me hold you in these arms again, like the first time. Yeah, it felt so right. I know you think that you don't move me anymore, but honey, it ain't you. I think it's me. Yeah, I gotta stop fighting myself and take it easy. No, honey, it ain't you. I think it's me. And I'm beginning to feel like one step closer to dying inside each time you don't smile. Put your feet to bed and come out tonight. It's alright.
That was a guitar.
Let me wrap you in this love I have. Satin and lace against your skin. What a lovely sight. I know my eyes, yeah, they've looked empty for some time, but honey, it ain't you. Love, baby, it's me. Yeah, I gotta stop fighting myself and take it easily. No, honey, it ain't you. I think it's me. And I'm beginning to feel like one step closer to dying inside each time you don't smile. You have shown me silver springs and a truth that lights a better way. Darling, please say you'll stay. I had locked away this failing, but your smile relieves me from my pain. Oh, I've looked down, I am not. I've been fighting a war inside myself, and sometimes I get lost. And I think it's me. Yeah, I've gotta stop fighting myself and take it easily. No, honey, it ain't you. I think it's me. Yeah, and I'm beginning to feel like one step closer to dying inside each time you don't smile. No, honey, it ain't you. I think it's me. Yeah, I gotta stop fighting myself and take it easily. No, honey, it ain't you. I think it's me. Yeah, and I'm beginning to feel like one step closer to dying inside each time you don't smile. No, honey, it ain't you.
I can talk. One more.
Young man, you gotta take a stand. Look for the message written on your hand. You got no plan for the coming man. Who knows what you want? Yeah, Mystic green or a deeper blue. There's more to life than the ones you choose. Don't try to keep what you can only lose. Who knows what you want? You do. And I'll laugh out loud when I see that cloud. Ground zero waiting for you now. When it's all too much and it gives you up. Ground zero waiting for you now. Here comes someone with a point of view. Break off a piece, you'll need something to chew. Lord knows we haven't got a clue. Oh, no, what you are, you do. Everybody's in the CIA. Shiny suits and a bullet to play. Don't talk to bitches, you might scare them away. Who knows what you are? And I'll laugh out loud when I hear that sound. Ground zero waiting for you now. When it's all too much and it gives you up. Ground zero waiting for you. Did we get this wrong? Abused too long. Ground zero waiting for you now. We made ourselves gone. Tell me where do we get off? Ground zero waiting for you Ground zero waiting for you now.
Buttoned ending. Lots of tape hiss. It kind of adds to the vibe. Yeah, Matchbox 20 was definitely happening. I remember flying out to see these guys play a show in Washington, D.C., or one of the surrounding suburbs. I think it was actually in D.C., and Matchbox 20 was... There were 3 bands on the bill that night. Matchbox 20 was one of them. And I think at the time they were still called Tabitha's Secret, I think. Anyway, big butt on the ending. Okay. Well, thank you guys. I'm glad you liked it. I am proud of it. I'm not going to lie. But, you know, the whole point of this episode wasn't for self-adulation, although I'll take it. It was because when I hear people talk about, layering 4 kick drums to get a sound, or layering a bunch of snare drums to get a sound, or, oh, I need to get it mastered. I mean, this stuff wasn't even mixed. There's no reverb on it. One of the other songs, which I can't play because it landed on a record, we didn't have reverb, so we took a couple of their wedges from their live gear and put it out in the garage. And because I was sitting in the garage wearing headphones, we just took I want to say a couple 57s or 421s, and did this with them out in the middle of the garage, and cranked up those wedges, kind of aimed them up at the ceiling, and used that room for reverb, and it worked pretty well. I mean, it wasn't the world's best sounding reverb, but it was good enough. My point is that anybody working with DAWs today and all the plugins, which I love, and they're awesome and all that stuff, but the actual art of recording, I believe, is becoming a lost art because everything else makes it so easy. And maybe progress should just be, maybe I should just look at it as progress is progress, you know? But I think that I feel fortunate that I learned from the best guys in the industry at the time. I'm so appreciative of that. I think about it all the time, and I will go to my grave someday being appreciative for the job that I got at Criteria, learning from the people that I learned from, and having actual audio recording chops. And I can't wait till the day where I can actually sit down with Logic Pro, and maybe I'll get the guys in Martin's Dam back together and take them. Ooh, that's actually a good idea. I was on the phone yesterday for 2.5 hours with Shirelli, who, by the way, is our guest. Keeping up the vibe, man. Shirelli will be my guest on Monday's Taxi TV at 4 o'clock. So give me a thumbs up if you like this episode. Actually, hit the red button if you're not already somebody who's subscribed to the channel. We'd appreciate the support because we make millions of dollars on our YouTube channel. Anyway, I always tell Shirelli, someday I want to just go rent. There's a room in North Hollywood called Sphere Recording Studios that Rob did a project in, and he called me up and said, you got to come down here and see this place. And I went down there. Seriously, it was like audio pornography to me. I was just drooling. Gorgeous Neve console, more outboard than I've ever seen in a rock and roll room. Any room, I think. Just tons of really high quality, esoteric, anything from the latest and greatest to the oldest and greatest in there. Just friggin' amazing. They had every guitar amp anybody could ever want to use, every drum set component that anybody could want to use, tons of guitars and basses. I mean, that place was just maxed out. And I said to Rob, some weekend, I just want to go there with either Shirelli and a bunch of great other players. I would do a jazz record in that room. I would love to do a rock record, but I would love to get Martin's Dam back together, have them rehearse a little bit, and then take them in there and do like 3 songs in a weekend with them in that room. So maybe that's why today's episode happened the way it did. When's the next Rob and Michael Lloyd together show? Maybe at the Road Rally? Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Martin's Dam. If you happen to catch this episode, loved working with you guys in every capacity. You're a great band. I'm surprised you didn't blow up and have giant hit records because you guys were great songwriters. The songs I played today were not among their very, very best. They're certainly very good, very strong, but these guys were great songwriters. That's it. Over and out. See you on Monday. I need to listen to headphones so I know what I'm doing here. See you on Monday with Rob Shirelli, where we talk about all things music business and audio related. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there. Be kind to your friends and loved ones. Bye.